it's set up is I've got this office here, but it's actually just part of one larger office, and we split it. And working with the other guys, I do like a couple of days a week with them, helping them out. And it's all around understanding weather and disease and its impact on growing different kinds of crops. And it's quite a complex system, and I find a lot of satisfaction working on it, because it's really connected to like issues like climate change. As climate changes, it becomes more difficult, or your situation for how you can grow different crops changes, right? And so that's sort of the work we do at quite a high level, for working with scientists and researchers and stuff to kind of take a lot of weather data and work with it.
So you're actually looking at data.
Yeah, my particular role isn't, I mean, I say role, but I'm like, we're pretty much, it's like quite a small team, so I do everything, but I don't look at the data myself, but it's more around the business development side of things, so trying to get opportunities to use our team and our data to build products and build research projects and things.
Mad, man, that's amazing work.
Yeah,
it's
really satisfying. Like we have a really good time actually. Like, because me and then Daniel sits next to me, and we all just hang out and go grab lunch and stuff with these guys. But it's like a real collaborative space, and it ticks a box for me because it's quite meaningful work. Like, it actually makes a difference for, being able to grow stuff. It's really challenging to grow food, man. Like, I don't know, normal people don't realize this, but there's so many challenges with like different insects and diseases and things, and if you use too much chemicals to like get rid of the disease, you end up killing the good ones, and you also end up putting all these chemicals into the ground, which isn't really healthy. So you want to use the least amount of chemicals possible. So
this is happening in the coffee industry as well at the moment. There's a lot of talk about sort of how climate change is changing where coffee can grow. Sort of like at the moment, the current understanding is that there is a belt around the equator called the coffee belt, and coffee can only grow in that like belt as it goes around the world. But what's happening is, as climate change is, ramping up recently, the coffee belt is basically just getting thicker and expanding, and we're starting to see like countries that could never grow coffee before are starting to grow now. It's mad how much it's changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a project that we're involved in where it's looking at how the climate, because you get microclimates even within a country where there's areas where you can grow things and areas where you can't. And I imagine the UK is like that as well, but with New Zealand, there's areas where you can grow apples and areas where you can't. And we're doing work on sort of understanding what those new emerging areas are going to be where you can grow, and what areas are going to become unsuitable. But it's all very fascinating, and I mean, I don't talk about it publicly very much because it's just, I guess, I've got kind of it's almost like the Tony Stark Iron Man thing, because I've got this day job where I'm doing this work where I'm really trying to focus on sustainability. It's about climate change. It's about food production. It's about the environment. But then I've got also this creative business and this photography and stuff. And they don't, unless you sit down and explain to people sort of how they connect, it seems like a bit random. It's like it's two different things. And I'm kind of moonlighting as a photographer or something. But the way I explain it is that it gives me a lot of purpose to have a job, or I mean to collaborate with these people, because it's not a job, it's like we're really working closely together. We share an office, right, and we're working on something that's quite meaningful, and it's future facing. We're building something that's going to be leading towards a better world, because sure, we've got droughts coming, and there's going to be climate change in areas that are going to be difficult to grow crops in. But using our technology, we can predict maybe when you can plant crops. Maybe you need to optimize your timing. Maybe you need to bring in some irrigation systems. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that we can do that I think is what the world needs. And it's like, instead of being pessimistic about it, it's like, well, actually, we're building technology solutions. It's easy peasy, and it's kind of something quite positive and kind of practical about all of that. And that feeds into... Sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, and then it feeds into being able to do the photography without being kind of just an artist, you know, like where you're kind of just floating around. It's like, well, actually, I'm also really keeping an eye out for sort of these agricultural changes. You know, what is, you know, what does it look like? Because it's a system, right? So you've got your bees, you've got your pollinators, you've got all of these waterways, and it's all connected, right? And so you can't just look at it as one thing. And I think that really helps my photography in a funny way. Like it's all connected.
Nice, man. I quite like that you're proactive about creating a solution as well, rather than just like, you know, taking the stance that most people do and just like complaining about everything, right? How everything is just turning to shit. And there's a lot of people who are just like moaners, right? But it's really nice to actually get doing stuff.
It's quite positive. Like we're having a good old talk the other day, just, you know, because there's some macabre topics right now around nuclear war, right? You know, and it's pretty scary, but we're having a good old chat and saying, well, you know what? It would actually be, you know, manageable if we maybe build in some radiation monitoring into our weather stations, you know, start being able to predict that. We could actually predict when there's too much radiation on the crops and they can't be picked or whatever, you know. Maybe there's not enough cloud cover because it's nuclear winter, and so we need to grow some varieties that are a lot more, you know, they don't need as much sunlight to grow, and so we can start predicting that because we can predict, you know, work with cloud cover and solar radiation, as in from the sun, to understand how it all works together. And so we're having this good old chat, and it's like, well, we're actually talking about the apocalypse, but there will always be people who survive and get through it, and it's just a matter of kind of being practical and kind of moving forward with things. And I think that kind of paralysis around actually doing something is because, you know, what do you do? You know, like how do you contribute? That afflicts a lot of people, and maybe you're in a job where you're part of this machine, but you're not really able to do anything, and so it's like you're kind of in bondage, and that could be quite a stressful place to be, I think.
I think it is at the moment. I think it is for a lot of people. Well, this conversation has taken a quick turn, hasn't it?
Yeah. No, we don't. I mean, look, maybe people aren't super interested in that, but I've always thought throughout my career, I've always had these kind of two-pronged attack, kind of a bit like yourself, right? Like I've got a job, and it's something I'm really passionate about, and it's something I'm really good at. But then I've also got something that is a creative outlet, and then what that means is that I've never been in a situation where I've really had to sell my photography like on as a commodity, you know. Like I can, and I have done, you know, a lot of commercial work, but it's like people coming to me and they say, hey, I want you. It's not like, oh, I have to find, you know, I got to scrounge up a wedding shoot or a thing, you know. Like I just, because I mean I don't do that, you know. So having the freedom.
Have you ever done that? You've never done that, right?
No, I don't do weddings. Though that said, I have got an idea for doing a little magazine with me and Rena, like kind of like a. I've been seeing this thing lately, like on Instagram. It's really quite cool. It's kind of like a Wong Kar Wai kind of approach, but you've got these like beautiful couples, but they're in like they're all dressed up in like wedding dress and suit, but they're in like in a market in Vietnam or something, like eating noodles, and it's really like, it's shot on film, it's real nostalgic, real beautiful, and I was like, man, that's so cool. That's like, instead of like just a formalistic like wedding photo, I was like, man, imagine if we made like a zine, you know, like a little booklet with like a story and stuff. I thought that could be super cool.
You tour around Asia, yeah, that would be amazing, man.
Yeah, you know, like, but like with the 35mm and like eating noodles and stuff, and we're all dressed up, so it's this kind of quite romantic, naive kind of thing. It's not just like, you know, we're sort of stuffy, you know, kind of grandpa and grandma. But I also like grandpa and grandma style. It's kind of like, there's something quite nice.
There's a place for that.
But what I don't like is the running through the fields kind of with this like, you know, the kind of contemporary wedding photography. But anyway, I mean, that's not my thing. I just, as a concept, I thought, fuck, can we just make it cool instead of just sort of awkward?
Who's going to take those photos for you?
That's
or is it going to be on tripods? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we need a creative director. So I might have a think like, how we can approach it. Maybe tripod, because you can act and direct in your own thing, right?
Yeah,
so
easy.
maybe I'll just like instruct somebody and be like, all right, this is what the framing I want. Can you do it, please? But anyway, that's in the future.
What else have you been working on, man?
Oh man, I've got a spreadsheet. I might have shared you in on it. We've got so many projects on the go. We got Wonder the Night Japan is wrapping up. I've got this bad boy right here.
Oh, look at that! That is so
It's
beautiful.
so sexy. Do you want to have it? I'll give you like a little virtual.
Yeah, please.
Little virtual session. So we got the There's the vinyl.
Isn't that so nice?
Yeah, that's where is it?
It's something really special.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
Side A.
It's got your little SJF 001 stamped on the inside, and
the matrix number.
Matrix number. Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I had a listen to. This is the one that I opened up to have a listen to, and I've just been using it because I've been finalising the liner notes photo book to go with it. So just getting the sizing and stuff. So I had this one just at my desk and measuring it up. But that's off at the printers. The liner notes is with the printer.
How long is that going to take?
Oh, maybe another week.
Beautiful.
And then once we get there, we'll be sending them out. So we're on schedule. I think we had November as the target. So I think we'll meet that easily. And there might be a few people who get it mid. Oh yeah, I actually don't know when people will get it, but I'll hopefully be shipping them out in the next 14 to 20 days, depending on when.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yes.
It's been a long time, and this project has really sort of taken up a lot of the last year for both of us, right? But
yeah.
I can remember when you first started talking about us doing vinyl was like, a couple of years ago. And I always said, yeah, one day I'm going to do some vinyl. Yeah, it's one day. And it was always tomorrow. And then, this was the year that we actually made it happen.
Yeah, no, you did well. And it kind of just goes to show, like, you just got to get shit done and put your mind to it, and just go. Don't wait, because you can wait forever and you still don't do it. So
yeah,
I think I had an interesting situation on Friday. So I went to jiu-jitsu at lunchtime, and
oh, nice.
It's really nice actually on like a Friday, easy Friday. I head down around 11 a.m, roll for an hour, and then just kind of wander back to the office. But I was walking back with a young guy who was also training with and had a roll with him, and he's in his first year at university doing photography and design. And he's probably like, I don't know, maybe 19 or something like that. And we're having a good old chat. And I was just saying, like kind of putting on my teacher hat, sensei hat, and just starting to give him some advice. And I was like, look, man, you've got unlimited free time. You need to be out there every day doing stuff because you will never have as much time as you have now. You haven't got a job. You got like 3 classes a week or something. I don't know how much they study, but you've got all of this. That you've got no commitments, unlimited free time, and quite a bit of freedom, really. And I was saying, you need to be hustling, you need to be working on projects, you need to be pushing your style and just looking and searching for what inspires you. Because if you're taking it easy, then it's only going to get harder to do the work you need to do later. And I realized, like, that's kind of where we're at now. That for our ability to kind of get this stuff launched and get projects over the line, that's taken like a long time to get to that point, right? Like I wasn't producing like this when I was 21, right? I couldn't do anything. So I think it's important to just continually refine that process and have a personal creative process to getting stuff done and going from zero to something and not getting lost along the way. Like thinking, it's kind of like thinking like an output, which is kind of like, maybe it's hard to conceptualize your own work as an output. But it's like, what does the thing at the end look like? And then just doing that thing. Yeah.
It's also not getting too caught up with perfectionism as well, because, I have noticed recently how much of a perfectionist I am, and sort of learning to let go of that, or to ignore that, to push that to one side. It took a lot of work, but I think that was always what stopped me from creating the vinyl before. It was just like, well, you know, it's probably not going to be perfect, so I'll just keep working until my music is perfect, and then I'll make the vinyl. But of course that day never comes. You never believe that you are fully like perfect, right? So it's just about getting stuff done as well.
Yeah, and that's it though. There's two kinds of perfection, right? So there's how would you say, worldly perfection, in the sense of like, is my work, you know, I mean the unachievable sense of like, is my work good enough, right? But then there's kind of a project-based perfection, which is kind of actually achievable, which is, okay, are there no spelling mistakes? Is the thing the right size? Are the colors correct? Like, those are things that have answers, and if you spend enough time, you can get them perfect. And there's always one mistake. There's always one thing that comes through, which is just the way it is. But that's where it's like, you got to come back to things again and again. With the album, you know, we went over it again and again. And every time you kind of polish it, it gets a bit better. And then it gets to a point where it's like, you couldn't really make it any better. It's at the best. It's the best of your abilities. And so, whatever your abilities are, that's the limit. But it's as good as it's going to get. And then you just have to do it. You know.
How do you find that point when you need to? How do you find that point where you know that you're at the best of your ability, right? Like, I think this is a problem with a lot of people. They're not sure when to stop polishing, and sometimes that's my problem, right? But with the liner notes, for example, you have sent me many like trial test runs, and every time it's a little bit better, and then now I guess you've decided, like, okay, I'm done, I'm finished, it's going to be the best that it can be. But was there something inside you that told you that, or so how does that work for you?
I've developed a process for revisions and kind of coming back to projects, because I definitely would feel quite uncomfortable taking a first draft of something and going to print with it, because print is quite final, right? With a website or a digital product, you can change it, but with something that's physical, you kind of have to get it right. And so I usually go through a process where I just start doing it, you know, start laying it out, start building it. Then I keep polishing that, but then I like talking to people. So I talk to people I trust, like yourself, you know, guys that I work with, you know, on this side or on that side of the room. I have a talk with the people around me in the studio, kind of get their thoughts, or just kind of like what we call rubber ducking. Have I told you about that before?
No.
So there's this idea where it's like, I kind of know the answer, right? But I just don't know that I know the answer. And
Sorry, you have. I love this. Yeah, go on. Tell me again.
And you got the little... So you talk to a friend, but they're just kind of a bouncing board for ideas. But you might as well just have like a little yellow rubber duck on your desk, and you say, oh, you know, what do you think about this? And you talk it through, the idea. So anyway, I do a lot of rubber ducking and be like, all right, what do you think about this? And then I like to print things out and see it in the physical space, and really just like, okay, do a sanity check on this? Is it, you know, is it the right way around? Have we got the right number of pages or whatever? And I do that process quite a number of times, and often what I find is that the initial pass can be quite what I would call literal when it comes to images, right? You know, you're just showing an image that shows a thing, but as you go into it, you start to kind of find the feeling or the theme that you're really trying to express, and you can identify the images or the words that really bring that out. And so I've gotten really good at kind of being able to do that and be like, okay, what's the feeling that we want to convey with this? There's a literal way to do it, and then there's kind of like a more, how would you say, cinematic way, kind of a narrative way of doing it.
Cinematic, yeah.
Yeah, and you would have seen that, like the last image in the liner notes, like what that was and what it's become has changed, and it's become a lot more like open, and it lets the viewer kind of fall into that. and there's little moments throughout the book which kind of I think do that, where we don't talk about what you see and just kind of state it. We kind of, it's almost like using silence in a piece of music or something. Like it almost has an energy of its own that you can kind of pull people into. So getting to the point where it's like, yeah, we're not just showing the thing as it is, we're actually kind of really taking on a journey in a poetic way. And it's actually, and this is kind of sounds like a cliche, but it's about taking stuff away instead of putting stuff in, so it's like, oh yeah, we could just take that out, get rid of that, have a blank space here. And that almost, that's like when you're starting to really polish.
I realized that halfway through, like when I was doing my Soundscapes radio series, like around about episode 8 or so, you'll notice, hopefully people will notice that that's what I started doing. Like episodes 1 to 7 were quite like thick of sound, and there was really like this wall of sound to everything, especially number 7. If you go listen to number 7, this is the perfect example. Like Soundscapes Radio episode 7 is just a thick layer of, or I like to use the word cloud, a thick cloud of sound, right? And I was just adding and adding and adding. It was very additive. My music process, my writing production style was very additive, always adding something. And then something clicked inside, and I was just like, you know what, it's too thick, there's too much. And then I started to experiment with being a bit more subtractive and taking things away and removing lines that I was really quite attached to, but I knew didn't work. Right, so things that motifs and melodies that didn't really work within the piece, remove them, take them away, let all the other parts shine. And this really helped my overall style. And now I have a lot more idea about how to sort of let the piece breathe. I didn't have that before, and it's really grown recently.
Yeah, letting it breathe, that's a really good way of describing it. And I think our process, we're in the same space there. Like when I was younger, and I still have a kind of nostalgia for this, there's a certain kind of amateur kind of approach, like kind of a student style approach, where you kind of throw everything you've got into this like collage and this mise-en-scène. And I actually really like that, not necessarily as the final product, but as the naivety of it. It's like there's something quite beautiful about someone who doesn't really know how to structure it, trying to do it and trying their best. But as an actual piece on its own, without the context of that, I think having a story that is like it just drives the feeling. Like I think really the core theme we're looking at with the Wander the Night project is around this kind of nostalgia. We've really kind of discovered that this kind of wandering nostalgia for the old world, not just the places we knew, but the way the world was before all of this stuff happened, right? Because I don't think Hong Kong or whatnot will ever be the same. Like I'll never be able to go back to 2018 Hong Kong and wander the streets and have this blissful ignorance of everything, right? Like it's forever changed. And so the project, the bigger project, not just the Japan album, but everything was kind of around nostalgia. But we really drilled into that with the Japan album. The music, it just sort of takes you on this journey, and it's this kind of melancholic wandering through the memories of all of that stuff. And the book adds to that as well. And so every decision kind of came around the idea of like, well, how is that reflecting the theme without being too much either, because you don't want to just cake it on and be too literal. You got to give it room. Yeah, we found a few. I remember we found a few Kickstarter projects that were sort of doing what we were doing, but a lot more literally and a bit more like jamming it, like spreading it on with a knife sort of thing. Yeah.
And I think we wanted to be a little bit more subtle.
Yeah, well, I think we found some references, but they were, again, I would say I'd put them in the category of I really like them because they're nostalgic for that kind of amateur student kind of trying their best. Young. It's quite youthful. Like I don't think, well, definitely myself, I didn't have the ability to do this maybe 5-10 years ago. Maybe the beginnings of it, but not not a coherent, self-contained project of this scale. And being able to then deploy that to other projects. I mean, it's the maturation of a creative process, which is cool. You know, like we're getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it
And
took
you
us
are.
5 years to get here, right? Like starting out in your little studio in where was it, Akihabara? No, where were you? Where was it? Where
My
were you
studio.
staying?
Where
Yeah,
was-
no, it was your apartment where our first night began.
Oh man,
Our-
that
our
was
first-
that was in
Where was
Akihabara.
that?
It was
No.
Jiyugaoka.
Yeah, that's
Sefka.
right.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, it takes time, probably a bit more than that. I mean, let's call it 10 years, right? I think for both of us. But yeah, it's cool, but it's good to be able to talk through it and get to the point where you're operating with symbols, you know, and you just know that you can. Like I was having a chat with another good friend of mine just around some of this, and like instantly we can both look at an image and be like, okay, this is what it's saying. You know, it's a bit too this, it's a bit too that. Like it's not even what it's a photo of. It's like the way it is. You know, like is it square and on a tripod, or is it kind of on a Dutch angle? You know, like all of that stuff. And it's quite powerful because you realize that actually most people don't have the ability to kind of interpret an image like that. And, you know, I can write, you know, and you do this at university, you write like an essay or something about a photo. But now I'm doing that and I'm encoding the image. So I've got the secret like function to encode this meaning into the images. And then other people decode it, but they don't have the ability to actually read the lines of code. They only get to read the output, and so they're like, oh, it makes me feel nostalgic, or I feel inspired, or I feel happy, but there's not the reasons why. They don't necessarily know that, whereas I'm able to like insert that into the photo.
I like that. I really like that, and I think that's what we're doing with the secret track that we're going to release alongside the album as well, Hikari. You know, it's sort of like this add-on, and it's got this really deep meaning, and this sort of, there's a lot of layers there. Whilst I was composing, a lot of things that were going through my head, and yeah, I think, you know, if you just listen to it, hopefully you'll pick up on the kind of the broad theme of what the track is about. But there's a lot of like there's 3 different phases, or there's 3 different movements within Hikari, and each of those movements has a rhyme and a reason and for being there, you know. And maybe one day I'll be able to sort of share with people what the meaning is.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. And the other thing is that like, this stuff takes on meaning once you put it out. Someone said this, like once you put it out into the world, it takes on its own meaning anyway. And so, you know, we're just sort of the auteur, the facilitator of it. But once it's out there, it almost becomes a public property in the sense that everyone can interface with it how they like. And, you know, it becomes referential. People start looking at the work. Maybe it inspires other artists. And you become part of this great cycle. And so it's like realizing we're all drinking from the same fountain of inspiration that lives within the human soul, and some of us are able to, you know, really interface with that quite well. And maybe I can't do it so well, but you know, we're all able to connect with that source of inspiration and creativity, which the Greeks were like, oh, that's the muses up in the, you know, Mount Parnassus or whatever. You know, they had like a deity that kind of was responsible for that. We don't really necessarily have a way of talking about that in modern society. It's like, where's it come from? But it's like it's within everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And they would like, I think in ancient civilization they had these like, you know, different gods that were like, you know, inspiring, and they were like bestowing this onto people, and it was quite a common theme that, you know, the people are just kind of the vehicle through which it gets expressed. Whereas we've become quite selfish about it these days. It's kind of like, what's my idea? It's like, I don't actually think it is.
Yeah, it's always like an amalgamation of everything you've ever consumed, right? Like I can see that now with my music. Like when I go when I go back and listen to albums that I listened to when I was 15 or 16 or something like that, I can hear those influences now in my music, you know, and sort of my music is a mixture of everything I've ever listened to up until this point, and possibly there's some kind of God in the background pushing me in the direction of creativity or something like that. But yeah, there's definitely sort of it's an amalgamation of everything that I've, you know, experienced, listened to, enjoyed.
Yeah, no, I think I would say there is a deeper fountain from which it all emerges, and which we can all share from, and it can be challenging to see that, especially when you're trying to commercialize and be, you know, kind of live within like the, I don't know, you know, trying to make it into a money maker or whatever. You know, you go to this IP, you know, copyright. So, you know, there can be barriers on how far you take that, but I believe it is all connected, and that if you go out, it's like you have a filter through which you can see stuff, and everyone has access to the filter, but it's just they're looking at different stuff. And the filter isn't something you can copyright, right? It's there's tools and ways of looking at it as well that I guess processes, but they're not something you can formalize really. You can teach it and it gets passed down and that, but it's not like it's not like a trademarkable, copyrightable kind of a thing, right? So I have no doubt that if you spend enough time around people, you can collaborate and bring out new ideas, even if it's just rubber ducking with somebody. It's like they're helping you and you're helping them. Like, you know, just talking to someone who's maybe doesn't do any artistic stuff, and they're like, oh, what about this? And then you're like, oh, that's actually a really good idea, and you can scaffold off that. So I think you can learn something from everybody, and it's important to talk about the work, socialize it, not feel too much like it's your own. Like even with this album and stuff, I'm like, man, this is so cool. I loved it because it's your album, so I'm just like, I'm facilitating Simon, but I'm not feeling too attached to it myself. It took me a long time to get over the attachment to it.
But the liner notes you're attached to, right?
Oh no, I mean it's got my name on it, but it's like I'm part of a bigger purpose here. There's like a thing that I need to do for this kind of theme of nostalgia. Like there's a bigger purpose which precedes me slapping my name on it in big capital letters. Because I didn't even do that. I was like, man, let's just leave the name off the cover. Let's put a tiny little name on the spine of the book, but I'm just going to leave the cover as is because it's not even about me. It doesn't matter. Like you'll find out who made the book at some point. Like it doesn't need to be screamed into your eyeballs. You know, like that it's you. Oh, it's me. If you know what I mean. So I'm like, just make it smaller. Like,
let the work speak for itself.
Let the work speak for itself. Give it room to breathe.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Just something came to my mind. Just completely changing topics. Yeah, literally. Have you ever written a letter to yourself, your future self?
All the time.
Like, do you do it often?
Yeah, probably once every couple of weeks.
What do you? So you're writing for a couple of weeks in the future, Cody, or a year in the future, Cody? Or?
It's kind of a mix. So because there's a diary, like I do a lot of journaling, and then every now and then I also do like a letter to myself. But I always do it in the first person, like because I've got like a piece of software that I Scrivener where I just write stuff, and so I'm like, you know. I did one on my birthday as well, I think.
Yes. So this is what I was going to say. Like for the last couple of years, around about my birthday, just before or just after, I write a letter to myself and just sort of explain how life's going and what I'm up to creatively or, you know, non-creatively, just how's life, you know, any aches or pains that I'm sort of experiencing at that time. How's my mental health and sort of physical health, all this stuff. And I've been doing it for the last 3 years, like yearly. And I set a calendar reminder so I never forget to do it. I sort of, wait for that alert to remind me. And then in that alert is the link to go visit the one that I wrote last year. And man, I love it. I really enjoy this at the moment because I completely 100% forget that I've written it, and then I get this alert in the calendar. I go back and read what I was thinking and how I was feeling, and I was like, oh, okay, I wrote in this letter that my tooth was painful or something, or was aching. Oh, thank God that stopped. You and I were just starting out with Wander the Night vinyl, and look at how far it's come now, etc., etc. Yeah. It's incredible. It's just so good.
I'll tell you one thing. That's really cool to hear, man. And by the way, I know it was your birthday recently, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
We haven't spoken since then, or since before then. But regarding the letters, so I'd like to know this. Do you find that you have a high level of trust for your future self? Or not?
That's an interesting question. Okay, so do I have a high level of trust for my future self? Yes. I don't know if I actually believe I do have a future self, right? Because I believe in now, right? In the power of now.
what I mean, because there's two ways. There's the future self and the past self, and just getting away from the existential question of what is the future or self, or what is the self. But what I love with the letter thing is you write a letter to yourself, and when I read those letters, I always laugh because I'm like, fuck, this guy's funny.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like, fuck, he set me up. Like, he's done the hard work. I haven't done anything. Like from the previous me. But then I also, when I am writing a letter, I'm like, oh man, the future Cody, like, he's gonna nail this. Like, he's gonna be all good. Like, imagine the amazing shit that he's gonna do. And I'm like dreaming about it in my letter to this guy, because I was like, man, so having that kind of four-dimensional self-love is really important. And if I guess I'm lucky that I feel that way, like no matter what's happening, because I can feel shit, but I'm like, this is just passing, we will get through this. And no doubt, when you read this in 2025 or whatever, either you'll be amazing and you're going to be a huge success, or the world's going to be a nuclear wasteland, or whatever, and it's somewhere in between. But it's going to be okay. Like, we'll get through it.
I love that. But I think you say you have a lot of trust in your future self, but I think that is projecting. I think it's you, right? It is you making these things happen and sort of making sure that you can get all your goals achieved, or at least work towards, right? Like,
what would Cody do? Like, would he just be like, oh, I can't really be fucked. I'm not gonna do this. It's too hard. He wouldn't do that. He would be like, what's the hardest possible thing we could do?
Exactly. Make yourself uncomfortable. Being too comfortable is a real problem.
I think something I've realized though as well is like the aversion to hard work, which sounds like don't work hard, but I've just never had an issue with busting my ass. Like I think I get it off my dad. Like, I just don't. Like, when I'm editing the book and I'm sitting there with my 12 inches from the screen for like hours just editing these photos and stuff, it's not an issue. I have to do it. It's not like whether I want to do it, I have to do it. And that having that attitude towards my work is really good. Like, good, bad, you can't really label it, but having the ability to just get through it and do the thing you need to do, whether it's challenging or not, because the alternative to that is just to do nothing and just meditate in the corner or something, which has got its own merits. But
Don't the Chinese call it lying flat? Is that what they say?
Yeah, like tongue ping. That's it. Yeah, like lying flat, not doing anything. But I don't ultimately think that's very rewarding. I think the most rewarding things are things you've got to work for. It sounds basic, but like you got to earn it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of what you just said about having to do something is if you accept that you've just got to do something, then it makes it a lot easier to get through it. So an example of this is at the moment Chia and I are completely painting the boat, right? And so you can't see it from inside because unfortunately it's all outside at the moment. We will start painting inside soon, but at the moment it's all outside. And the boat is moored in such a way that it's on I think they call it a chevron. Is it when you're sort of like at an angle from the pontoon? So basically out this window and out that window there is river. I'm not moored against the pontoon or anything like that. There's river, and then at the back of the boat we can step off onto the pontoon. But what that means ultimately is that to paint the boat we have to walk along the gunnels, which are the little side bits here, which are just like half a foot's depth. So I can stand on the gunnels, but my feet are sort of like
hang off.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hanging off the side of the boat and painting, right? And everyone that like sort of talks to me about this is like, are you mad? Like, you're hanging off a boat and painting it, and like, what if you fall in the river? Blah blah da, 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 da. And the thing that I keep coming back to in my mind is like, yeah, you're right. I'm mad, but I just have to do it. I just have to get this done.
Yeah, you have to get it done. But honestly, though, when you're actually doing the painting, do you find that it's quite meditative?
Oh, absolutely, man. 100%.
I love painting.
Like, the thing is like my mind is just switched off from any like anxiety or
just painting.
Upset, anything. I'm just like painting, sanding, painting again. Love it.
If I had to do it, so you see that wall on the back there, I painted that, and it's just a couple of coats and stuff, but I really enjoyed that. I was thinking like, man, there's something really underrated around. I mean, we talked about this before, like my job when I was doing the vacuum cleaning, like office cleaning and stuff. Like, there's something really meditative about these kind of repetitive, kind of zen-like jobs, and I really think everyone, can appreciate that when you get into that flow state, it's like beautiful, and you finish and then you're like, man, that's when your inspiration can hit. It's a beautiful summer's day. On the canal in London, you're painting a boat, and it's like your next album, just sort of like the seed falls into your brain, like
comes in. Yeah.
But the alternative to that, which I think is a challenge, which I do suffer from myself, is when there's work that I know I don't really have to do it, and I don't have a spiritual connection to it. That's really hard for me to do, and in fact, I shut down. And so what I mean, like, we had a project recently, like a website project thing. And I didn't align with it, I guess. Like, it didn't really tick my box. And I literally was unable to even open the folder on my computer. Like, and I've had this happen before. Like, if I believe it and I know that I have to do it, then I just do it. It happens. But if I can't convince myself that there's a purpose to it, and it doesn't connect with with my life, I'm unable to complete it. I can't half-ass it. Half-assing it is actually more work than doing it perfectly at that point, and both of those are not options. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I wonder if the reason that there are so many people lying flat and not having these things in their life is because they have no higher purpose. Because that's what you need, right? You need some kind of higher goal that you're working towards. And then all of these jobs that you have to do, they help that higher purpose.
Even when I'm working with these guys next door and we're doing this agri-tech stuff, it's quite a small team, but we're able to do amazing stuff. You know, like it's really quite amazing, and I'll give you more info. Like I'll give you the deeper rundown one day, but like it is kind of really amazing work for a team of a handful of people. But the reason we're able to do that is because every single person on the team is aligned with the idea, not just as a job, as a function, as something you do, but it's like deep in their heart that like this is important to the world. It's important to me. It's something that I can get behind. It's authentic, da da da. And so it's like, yeah, we just go, and there's no barriers to using our full capability at that point. And it's the same with you and me collaborating. It's like, I'm not like, oh man, we're doing an album, but I don't really want to do it. It can't be fucked. You know, I just kind of call it in. It's like, no, 100% of my worldly energy gets put into it, and the output shows, right? But because we're that kind of person, when something comes along that we don't really want to do, it's like we're allergic to it. And that's why I often say to people, like, I'm unemployable, because if you like, all right, Cody, I'm going to have to get you to do this, and this, and it's like, sorry, I can't. I'd love to help you out, but I just can't do it, man. Like,
well, we can say no to people, right? We can say no to things.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's important.
That's
free up the calendar to do the important work, the important things.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, speaking of important stuff, like, because I might mention I've been doing the jiu-jitsu thing, and man, have you ever done anything like that?
No, I would love to, but I haven't yet.
I'm when I come over to the UK at some point, we're going to go for a roll, and we're going to give it a go, because I'm cautious to sort of pass judgment too early, because it's only been, you know, not even really 6 months, but it really is quite life-changing.
That's what I hear from everyone that does it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Because you're still going to the gym, right?
No, not the gym, but I'm going to start climbing.
Climbing,
soon,
okay. Climbing's a good
fun
thing to get into, yeah. But there's something about this particular martial art. I think there's a few in this space that are really they're all kind of connected, but in particular jiu-jitsu. I love judo as well. It's a little bit more formalized. But yeah, man, definitely, like, it's hard to. It sounds like a bit funny, because you're like, I wouldn't have listened to this advice before, but now that I've done it, I'm like, yeah, this is something that everyone should try. I think, at least, because it just fits my life really well, and I don't know how else to describe it beyond that. But yeah.
Is it specifically Brazilian jiu-jitsu that you're doing?
Yeah. It's
BJJ,
yeah. It's kind of like, because judo is like the OG standing like throws, and then that went to like Brazil with some people, and then they kind of adapted it,
right,
and played with it. So it's quite multidisciplinary. Like you're standing, and you're also on the ground, and it's really quite low impact. Like you're not really getting injured. You know, you're not getting punched in the face. There's a little bit of physicality, or there's quite a bit of physicality, but it's quite technical. It's a real thinking man's kind of a sport, and you can really slow it down. You know, it's not about speed; it's kind of about technique. So yeah,
and you're sort of sympathetically moving together, right? You're moving together, right?
Yeah, and you spar. You know, like on day one, you know, you pretty much, you know, you don't have to learn all this stuff to get started. Like you literally start, and so maybe if you've never been in a fight before, it's like you're in a situation where someone's trying to get you, and it's all friendly, but it's like really quite powerful, because it's not like an aggressive kind of aggro situation. It's like someone's trying to get you, but it's very friendly, and they're like looking out for you, but then they're going to choke you, and so it really calms you down, and it's like, man, you're just in the flow state. And so it's like, man, there's nothing that I could, like, on a Friday afternoon, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry guys, I'm gone, you know, because I'm going to training. Like, and I never got like that with the gym. I was like, I don't really want to go to the gym, but it was like kind of like I had to do it. But now there's no way I'd go back to the gym unless I had an injury or something and I couldn't train. Because it's like, man, I'm just lifting weights. It's like, it's nothing. It used to be something for me, but now it's like I've actually got this more. Yeah, so I shouldn't shit on the gym too much, but
No, but I know what you mean. Like the gym can be very just monotonous sort of thing, just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And if you don't have a goal and a plan and a regimen for yourself, then you just fall into or it's very easy to fall into an easy routine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, growing, learning, moving up with something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or maybe like climbing, which I'm really excited to start soon, is a lot better for you as well, right? And also using your brain, right? You just said that, Jiu-Jitsu is all about sort of, it's a thinking man's sport, and same with climbing.
Yeah, climbing and jiu-jitsu actually go together really well, man. Like a lot of the guys I train with also climb. So you give it a go, and if at some point in the future we could go roll together, or if you ever get a chance to just drop into a lesson or something, man, because it is, honestly, the other thing is just the physicality. It really, like, you walk out of it and you're like, man, this feels good, and on top of that, you've also got, you suddenly realize, like, that kind of combat philosophy of someone like Marcus Aurelius. And you're like, oh yeah, I now know he's talking about like, because they always had wrestling, even in the old days, right? It was an Olympic sport, and you're like, oh, I see now. It's like, yeah, you can't be the philosopher king without an understanding of combat sport. Because if you're just an academic and you're behind your machine, or you're behind the books, but you don't have the physicality to actually get onto the mat and roll, or even climbing, to do something like that, but there's something different about when it's a martial art and there's someone else, and it's like anything can happen, and you can't judge them. You don't know who they are. It could be a tiny little person who's got the skills, and they're just going to get you, and it's like it humbles you, and it's like, yeah, it just everything. It just feels, it's like a missing part of the puzzle that I didn't even know was missing until I did it. And it didn't, interestingly though, it didn't stick at first, because I did try it a little bit with my friend in Japan. I did it a little bit there, but it didn't really, I was like, oh, it's not really for me. But now I'm like, yeah, I've definitely changed my mind. So maybe my younger self was too ignorant to understand.
Yeah, it takes time for a lot of things in our life, right? Like, well, no, I think it's the same for everybody. Like this, this boat painting project has taught me that I should have never been afraid of like DIY and getting dirty and sort of like stuff like that, because forever, for my whole life, I've been afraid of picking up a screwdriver or a hammer or something, drill or something like that, because I thought, oh no, that's not me, I can't do that. It's I'll leave that for the professionals. But I think just, again, oh my man, like it's all coming around in a circle. But basically, that it comes back to that perfectionist thing, right? You think, well, why would I paint my boat? Because I'm not going to get it perfect. It's not going to look great. It's going to look a bit rough in some places, blah blah blah. But actually, just doing it and just getting on with it and fixing the mistakes later if you can. If you can't, whatever, just accept them, right? But this is sort of something that I was really afraid of before, and it's all about just doing it and just getting into
just do it, man. That's literally, like, if we could sum up, I'm wearing the Nike sweatpants at the moment, so like we got the tagline here: just do it.
Just do it.
And even if you suck, because I always sucked, I still suck with a lot of things, but it's like, man, you just got to do it, and you got to get better. I'm like the noob in jiu-jitsu, getting choked out every day, but you just got to do it. And by going through that process and iterating on it, you're going to learn, because you can't think yourself into perfection. You can't just visualize it and then it will appear. You got to learn how to do it, and it's a messy process. You paint the wall and you leave a spot and you mess it up, and it's like, okay, next time I'm not going to do that. But there's something quite authentic about that, because if you live in this kind of clean cut, it's too beautiful, it's too tight. It's like, man, who did that? And the reality is nothing's like that, man. If you've ever seen the inside of anything, even like big companies and stuff, they're useless. They mess things up all the time. But you just don't get to see it because they brand it really well, and they sort of...
Yeah, they hide it.
But it's like, man, like, people would be surprised, even like at the highest level, the amount of people winging it is incredible.
Yeah.
Our Prime Minister, the President of the United States, they're all winging it. And it's quite clear in some cases, but like it's like, yeah, it's just the way it is, you know. You got to just go.
Nobody has it sorted out, man.
No,
nobody has it sorted out.
But yeah, man, no, it is good to catch up, and I hope you do. You can finish your painting before it gets to. You haven't fallen in yet, have you?
I have not fallen in.
Can you swim in the river, or is it pretty dirty?
It's pretty disgusting. You wouldn't want to fall in. I would be able to stand up, and I would be sort of up to waist height. But the bottom of the river is very silty, and I'd probably sink in quite a bit. Get a bit stuck.
Is it static water, or is there a bit of flow?
It does flow because we have a couple of locks like down the river and behind us as well. So when the locks open, the river moves quite a lot.
Oh man, that's so cool. Yeah.
You'll have to visit one day.
Yeah, no, I actually I've already done like a little Google Maps kind of tour around your place, but I would love to come and see it in real life. Hey man, look, let's wrap it up there. It's great to catch up with you. I mean, so much to talk about. Hopefully it makes sense to our listeners.
It was great, man. Thanks so much for that.
Conversations. Sweet. So we'll wrap it up there, but we'll keep in touch, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, man. Have a good night. Take care.